Welcome to Old Fashioned Finance, the podcast that mixes cocktails and high finance. I'm your host, Jason Demland, and I am joined, as always, and in the future, by my good friend and fellow money muddler, Caleb Frankert.
Jason, can a podcast about finance be entertaining?
Not without alcohol.
Well, all right, let's mix it up. Hey, man.
Caleb, there are a few things in life that are just the greatest things in life. Think of when your children were born.
Yeah.
Smelling their heads.
Yeah, that's weird, but yes.
Yeah, well, it's not weird. If parents out there know what I mean.
Yeah.
Smelling a newborn baby's head.
There's an Everybody Loves Raymond episode where the grandpa, Frank, is smelling the baby's heads, and he goes, I'm sucking in the fountain of youth.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's up there in euphoric experiences. There are other things.
Easy. We haven't had that much to drink yet.
My point is, I think I have had one of these Everest moments today.
Yeah.
I am eager to share with our listeners.
Episode 37 is a milestone.
This is episode 37? We've done 37 episodes?
In a row? Yes. Yeah.
This is a milestone. It's euphoric.
It is.
We're having a mountaintop experience because today we are drinking a unicorn of bourbons.
It really is. It's not really a unicorn because the unicorn has one horn, I guess. This has a lot of them, more antlers. We're drinking Stagg Jr. today.
Yeah, that's a 12-pointer.
That's a good sized buck.
Yeah.
Stagg Jr. is, if any of you are bourbon hunters, or bourbon enthusiasts, you know what we're talking about. I don't know, Jason, at least of this bourbon hunting season, I think that this is the one that everybody's looking for.
It seems like it for this fall right now. Mm-hmm. And you know, everyone, this is Old Fashioned Finance, the podcast about mixing cocktails and high finance. Today's cocktail is going to be Stagg Jr.
You don't want to mix this.
I believe that that would be maybe the unforgivable, unpardonable sin.
Look, we've said in the past, mixing good spirits makes better cocktails.
Absolutely it does.
Not allowed here.
I don't think you should do it to this.
Not allowed.
I mean, the old-fashioned that you could make with Stagg Jr. is probably delectable, but...
I'm sure it is, but you know what? Those bitters better be amazing. They better be the best sugar ever.
I can't compare sugars with each other and bitters with each other, but I've had many bourbons.
Mm-hmm. This is the best I've ever had. And you know what, Jason? It's by a lot.
Yeah, it's not close. We've heard from other bourbon aficionados that this is up there with several other high-tier bourbons. Mm-hmm. It is in a league of its own. Stagg Jr. comes out in different batches.
Twice a year.
Actually, let's go right into it. We're talking about the drink. Let's mix it up.
All right. I've got my glass. I've got my bottle. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pour into my bottle. We're drinking from... Yeah. I might drink it out of the bottle. We're swishing it around, swirling it in our Glencairn glasses, which is the way that bourbon snobs do.
Yeah. We've upgraded recently, and now we drink out of Glencairns, which are like tulip-shaped glasses, everyone.
What we're doing is we're looking at the legs.
Yeah, we're swirling it.
It's coating that glass real well.
How does it drip down the sides?
Slowly. Like syrup.
Does it stick to the sides? And yes, it does. This is an oily bourbon. We've learned from Fred Minnick that you can tell a lot about the distillery from how it clings to the sides of the glass.
And he wears an ascot, so I believe him.
What's his podcast? Bourbon Pursuit?
Bourbon Pursuit is, and you know what? That's, okay, so if you catch Stag Euphoria like we have, you might want to listen to that podcast. They talk about what's going on in this week in bourbon hunting, all the new releases, all the allocated stuff that's hard to get. And he's a what is he? Whiskey advocate, right? I think was maybe he used to work at Whiskey Advocate. I don't know.
He's written for lots of places, I think, and he's got YouTube
He judges
videos.
bourbons though in competitions.
Yes, he is a judge.
Yes.
And so, yeah, we watched a short video about how to taste bourbon from him at one of our recent bourbon clubs.
Which has been a blast, by the way. If you're listening, and maybe you haven't seen the invite on our Facebook or whatever, Bourbon Club.
December 16th of December.
5:30 to 7-ish.
Come on out.
At Blue Jay Financial Group here in Defiance. It was we had our second Bourbon Club meeting, and it was a really, really good time. We had a lot of people out here trying a lot of different stuff. I can't promise that this would be on the menu, though. I like to share bourbon with friends. This is really special. You know what? We had some of this a couple hours ago, just to taste a little bit of it, and we haven't sipped on it since we went on air. Let's do that right now.
Okay.
My goodness, that is so good.
I mean, we're gonna have to edit some of the tasting out because neither of us wanted to speak.
Yeah, when they edited out, there were like 10 seconds there where nobody said anything. It's still finishing, by the way. Stagg Jr. is a Buffalo Trace brand.
Yes.
George Stagg was one of the pioneers of bourbon, going way, way back. So anyway, Buffalo Trace in states like Ohio, these liquor controlled states, are allocated. They're hard to find. There's not as much. You can't just walk into the liquor store and grab a bottle of Buffalo Trace. Now, you and I were in Fort Wayne, Indiana yesterday, and there were probably 20 bottles of Buffalo Trace on the shelf.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very popular bourbon. It's not always on the shelf, but you can find it there. Here in Ohio, you pretty much got to know where it's arriving before it's arriving to get a bottle. And Stagg Jr., I totally lucked into this one. I was at the right place at the right time. The truck had come in, and I walked in maybe 30 seconds after it hit the shelf. That's all it lasted. But this is, and I have not had, by the way, I've not had Pappy. I haven't had the holy grail of bourbon, so I can't say that it's better. I don't know. Other Jason, who's not here with us today, he tried some of this, and he's had Old Rip Van Winkle, which was not a cheap pour, by the way. And he said this one, hands down, was better than Old Rip Van Winkle. So this is competing with the Van Winkles, we'll say, at least in Jason's book. I don't know. I haven't had it. But this is a barrel proof, right? So what that means is it comes straight out of the barrel. They don't proof it down by adding water like they do with most of them. So this one comes in at 64.35%. You would expect this to be pretty hot, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely heat there, but it's such a smooth...
It's like a brown sugar syrup that just coats your mouth and...
like a little bit of dark chocolate at the back. It really what it's doing is you have different areas on your tongue where the taste buds taste different things. It is activating my entire tongue and my cheeks and my jaw. Like the flavor sensation, it almost feels like a wave going over my tongue.
I didn't know that bourbon could taste like this. For the people that have had like Pappy Van Winkle 23, we've heard like William LaRue Weller, the other like really highly touted bourbons. If this is what they taste like, I get it. I want to taste those. I know. What was his name? The restaurant guy that made Pappy super famous, Anthony Bourdain. When Anthony Bourdain had Pappy 23 in one of his shows, and he said, "This is bourbon." I'm imagining it was similar to this.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's better. If it's better than this,
we've had a lot of bourbon. This. Immediately, first sip, there was no question in my mind, this is the best bourbon I've ever had, by a lot. Here's the deal. In a controlled state like Ohio, the nice thing is that you don't have to try to find a bottle online for $500 that may or may not be a fake.
Yeah.
You get it for MSRP, I guess. It was $46, which is not cheap by any means, but what you're getting here... Folks, if you see this on the shelf, I might even say it's okay to break the budget and buy a bottle. It's that good. It's really, really excellent. And after we tried this, we thought, you know what? We're not doing a cocktail for this episode. Stagg needs its own episode. So Excellent stuff. I feel like drinking this bourbon, now I know what it's like to be rich.
I think that's a good analogy. These bourbons and trying to find rare bourbons, you can kind of get caught up in, is it good or is it just hard to find? And now the crowd's going after it.
Yep. I wanted to not like this because I know it's hard to find and that I probably won't be able to get another bottle of it.
Yeah.
But dang.
It lives up to the hype.
Yeah.
It makes me bummed about other bourbons.
Yeah, so they come out with a new batch every 6 months, and every batch is different. So this, just to clarify, this is batch 17. This is actually the last of the Stagg Jr. because the next batch will be 18. It will not be Junior anymore. It will just be Stagg. So that's interesting. And I actually toyed around with the idea of not opening this because it's the last of the Stagg Jr. Boy, am I glad we opened this.
I am very glad you opened it, and I'm glad you're my friend because I'm getting some, and it's amazing.
It's fantastic. This episode may be full of more pauses than most as we're sipping on this as we go. So excellent stuff. If you're a bourbon guy or gal, maybe it's been long overdue that we do an episode dedicated to a bourbon. We've done some small batch episodes, and those are fun, where we just talk about a small batch. But this one's in a league of its own. Fantastic. If you find this, get it.
It's so good.
Do whatever is necessary to secure a bottle.
From a financial perspective, Caleb, if somebody sees a bottle for
break the budget, I don't care.
You can buy it. You can sell the bottle instantaneously afterwards for 10 times what you paid for.
Well, let's put it this way. Because it's hard to find and it's only $40-some a bottle, I would say I'd be okay. I would tell you as your financial advisor, it's okay to break the budget on this one because, A, it's not that big of a sin. It's only $40-some. We'll make it up somewhere else. Do yourself a favor and secure a bottle of this if you can find it. Jason, I feel like anything that we pull out of one of these liquor stores, standing in line or finding on allocation day, it's just going to disappoint going forward unless it's Stagg Jr.
Yeah. Maybe unless it's one of those other highly touted bourbons. But man,
it's real good.
It's so good, everyone. So good. And this has warmed us up real well, Caleb. To talk about today's finance topic. It is not a small business, small batch episode. Today, we're talking about cognitive biases.
Cognitive biases.
It's an interesting transition there because we're talking about the bourbon pursuit, right?
Yes.
Where you don't know if you actually like the bourbon or you just like the hunt, or if you think the bourbon is great, or if you are influenced about it being great because other people say it's great.
That's a great analogy. The herd mentality is a big one. It'd be real easy to buy into the hype. I think you and I have both probably fallen victim to this,
for sure.
Everybody says this is the one that you got to get, and you get it, and you go, I don't know about this, but everybody else says it's great, so there must be something wrong with my taste buds, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of. Well, maybe I don't want to blow it here because it's going to be one of these biases, right? But you kind of fool yourself into thinking, well, the crowd can't be wrong. I must be wrong. So even though I don't like it, I like it.
You're sure? You know what? I think we can let's go through these.
Let's do it.
Cognitive biases, because I think we're going to be able to attach each of these to bourbon.
I think so. What an episode we put together.
I know, we're geniuses.
I don't know. Maybe we're just really happy right now.
I am euphoric with this Stagg Jr.
Caleb, lead the way.
The first cognitive bias I want to talk about, cognitive bias, y'all, is just fancy psychology babble for your brain doing the wrong thing without you thinking about it.
You have an internal leaning because of probably some irrational reason, right?
Usually, yeah. Well, when we talk about...
It could be rational, though, too.
Well, we talk about finance, we talk about economics. Usually it's built on Adam Smith's rational actor.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to act in our own best interest all of the time.
Wealth of the nations. Way to drop that one.
Oh, boom. But sometimes... we don't act rationally, and there's a whole field of study about this. Behavioral economics, behavioral finance has really taken off over the last 10 or 15 years, and there's been lots of research in this field, and it really applies to us and what we do every day, dealing with people's finances and trying to give them advice. Some of these cognitive biases we have to help people overcome.
Right, and when we're talking about money, I think a lot of times we have a tendency to be even more irrational and emotional because of what's tied to that money, right? Like, I know what I had to do to get this. I worked really hard to get this. You think about someone who's at a job that they don't like, and any amount of money that they've accumulated, there's definitely emotional attachment. They don't want to lose that because they toiled away at a job they hated, right? We tend to get really emotional about money, and the problem is emotional decisions are usually the ones you got to watch out for in finance. So yes, behavioral finance, this is big. I'm glad we got to kind of crack into this one a little bit because we've really been wondering how do we get into behavioral finance? This is a good one, and it's really kind of why we have jobs, I think.
Oh, big time. Absolutely. If everyone was totally rational, we wouldn't need to be hired.
Right.
That's what we help for. It's a lot like hiring a dietitian or a strength coach or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. We're just going to be scratching the surface. We're gonna kind of go through 5 really common ones, and we'll just kind of touch on them a little. And our whole point here is to get you to be a little bit aware of what these biases might be, and really analyze your own thinking about things, and really be honest with yourself. Caleb, the first cognitive bias I want to talk about is loss aversion. Mm-hmm. And this is basically, it's not that it's irrational that people want to avoid losses. We all do. Mm-hmm. That's healthy and good. It probably goes back, it's coded into our DNA so we don't die.
It's a survival instinct. So, yes, absolutely.
That's rational. Loss aversion, when we're talking about this, is about the priority we place on avoiding loss over getting rewards or gains.
Yeah.
And I know you've heard, and we probably referenced it on this show before, that there's been studies that we feel loss twice as much as we feel a gain of the same amount.
You know what? Case in point, we had someone show up today at the office to finish up some work, and they're also clients. And I heard, because today was kind of a rough day in the market, by the way, right? And I heard no less than 3 times, "Wow, today's a bad day. This really hurts. What's going on?" And you kind of want to be like, "Hey, so you're down 2% today. What about the 20% that you're up on the year?" Didn't hear about that, right?
Yeah, right.
That 2%
is
leaving much more of an emotional impact on that person.
Yeah.
And I'm not picking on him, by the way. But I'm just, that's an example, right?
Yeah.
We remember the losses more. The losses hurt more than the gains
feel good,
I guess.
Yeah, and that causes us to do irrational things.
Yep.
Because we're much more likely to make a big change if there's been a loss than we are if there's been a big gain. You're not likely to go more conservative,
right,
and lock in gains after a 10% increase in your portfolio or $1,000 gain.
Right.
But if you lose $1,000, you're a lot more likely to lock that in because you don't want to get hurt anymore.
Yeah. And I think people even know, well, I know I'm not going to make anything, but at least I won't lose anything. Mm-hmm. At least I won't lose anything.
I don't want to feel any more pain.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to get hurt again. I don't want to get back out there on the dating. I mean...
Well, luckily we didn't have to deal with that a whole heck of a lot.
That's true.
I didn't date a lot, so I didn't get hurt a lot
because
either.
Of loss aversion, I think, right?
Yes, perfect example, yeah. So, all right. So you said we're going to tie all these to bourbon. So how would we tie this one to bourbon?
Do you have a good idea?
I don't know about this one.
I don't know about loss aversion.
This might be the only one that doesn't really tie in.
I'm not buying bourbon because I'm afraid it'll taste bad.
No.
Maybe I'm not buying $100 bottle because I don't think it's going to be worth it.
There's how you tie it in, right? I am not very apt to go out and buy a $150 bottle of something that I've never tried before, right? Because what if I don't like it? Or what if I like it just as much as I like that $30 bottle, right?
Yeah.
Then the buyer's remorse sets in. Yeah, and I like that $130 better than
right.
But there's also a chance that it could be the most amazing thing I've ever tried. Mm-hmm. But I'm more apt to hang on to my $100 and some dollars, $130, whatever it was we just said, and not experience how great it could be because I'm afraid that I might be disappointed. Yeah. There, that's how we tie it in.
All right, that's good. I mean, that might have been a little stretch. I think we'll do better on the next ones.
Kentucky Owl.
Okay.
I see it on the shelf at liquor stores for $125. I'm not going to buy it because I don't know. I feel like it's sitting on the shelf, so how good could it be?
Yeah, I can get it, so why should I buy it?
Yeah. If I don't like it 5 times as much as the $25 bottle of Buffalo Trace, then I'm going to be disappointed, right? So I'm just not even going to try it. But it also could be by far my favorite bourbon of all time. I'll never know.
No, you won't. Caleb, okay. I want to go on to the next cognitive bias then.
Number 2.
This is the endowment effect. And let me just break this down for you because there's a very famous University of Innsbruck study. I think it's a German.
Okay.
I think it's in Germany.
That sounds right.
Innsbruck. No, I can't. In one experiment, students were given either a chocolate bar or a coffee mug. That's a beautiful language.
Yes.
So in this experiment, students in the school were given either a chocolate bar or a coffee mug at the beginning of their class. At the end of the class, the students were then given the chance to trade their chocolate bar for the coffee mug or vice versa, whichever they want. In whatever they had, the students were almost all across the board unwilling to trade whatever they had been giving for the other thing. This is the endowment effect. Once you have something, you start to value it much, much more
because you have it.
It's yours.
Yeah.
It's your precious.
Is it? Oh, precious.
Yes. It's mine. My own. My precious. Caleb is clutching the bottle of Stagg Jr. now.
Precious. Do you think it has more to do with it being yours and that's why I like it because it's mine, or is it, well, this is a known commodity?
It's really,
and again, well, kind of playing off of what we talked about with the last one. What if I trade it and I don't like what I traded for it as much as I like this?
It's because of our fear of loss. It's that same loss aversion that we are not trading it. I know that I like this X amount, but what if I don't like the other thing?
You know where I hear this one all the time? The markets have done well for the last few years, like really well for the last 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we talk to clients and they want our advice, or I say prospects, right? They want our advice and they go, okay, but should I move this? Because it's been doing really good.
Yeah.
It's that idea of, I don't know, is it that these investments are so great? No, if you haven't done well over the last 3 years, right? If you haven't done well in the markets over the last 3 years, something's really broken.
Yeah.
But there's this idea of, well, I don't want to change this, though.
Yeah.
Because I'm attached to that. I know it. As long as I can remember, it's always performed well. As soon as I move it to something, what if we don't do as well? You know what? That's really likely, actually, that we won't do as well next year as we did this year.
For sure.
Or the year before, because otherwise the markets would average 30% a year and not 8%. And guess what? Everybody would be all in all the time if that were the case, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you get some more practical application in things like when you have brand loyalty to something over something else. I know a lot of people just buy Sony electronics all the time because that's what they have. Or in video games, it's the console wars.
Yeah. There's
Xbox fans versus PlayStation fans. And like really, guys, they're pretty much the same. We talk about pipes. You could be a Dunhill guy or a Savinelli guy or a Peterson guy, or you could be a guy that likes pipes. And they're all good for different things.
I own Dunhill, Peterson, and Savinelli. I like them all.
But you know, you've been like, you've gotten into a camp because maybe you had to make a financial decision and it was hard, and then you finally picked something
and it paid off.
Yeah, and you're like, this is better.
Yeah,
and it has to be better because I have it.
Yes,
and if it's not better, then I'm dumb.
Yeah,
and I won't admit that, and I won't change. And you can make some errors from that. It causes, you know, it could cause some poor decision making if you are allowing that bias to affect you.
The brand loyalty is a great illustration of this. We said we're going to tie it back to bourbon.
Yeah.
You know what? The Buffalo Trace lineup has not disappointed. Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, Elmer Thiele, E.H. Taylor, now Stagg. There's more in there. Weller, right? So I'm more apt to buy into the hype because they've never let me down.
It'd be more like you have a Stagg Jr. now. Will you trade it for a Pappy 15?
Here's the deal. That's a great question because this has knocked my socks off.
You know you love it.
There is a chance that I wouldn't like the Pappy 15. And then I wouldn't have this, and how do I replace this?
I think most bourbon people out there would be like, that's ridiculous. Trade it for the Pappy 15.
I know.
But you are now endowed with Stagg Jr.
Okay. No, but that's a good point.
That's the endowment.
I know
effect.
So far, this is, in my opinion, the best bourbon I've ever tasted. Therefore, it's the best bourbon out there in existence, right?
And it's mine.
All right, I'm glad that we tied that to bourbon again, too. What about the third one, Jason?
The third one I want to talk about is the sunk cost fallacy. This is more common. Lots of people have heard of this.
Yeah.
It's mostly boiled down to throwing good money after bad, Caleb.
Yep. We see that.
Absolutely. Once you have committed to something, whether or not it was a good idea,
you feel like you have to continue it because you've already invested some time or some money into this thing.
And there's a reason you bought into that in the first place, right? You couldn't be wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe it's one of the other things that we talked about. That's the reason for buying. It's ours. It was my idea. I did the research. When we have our due diligence days and we research a fund or an ETF that we really like, we might be more apt to be like, no, so what, they had a bad quarter. I'm riding with it. There's a reason I picked it. It was my idea.
These are mine.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. Whenever we've invested more time or more money into something, it's harder to give it up because we're committed.
Yeah.
And we feel like, well, if we've already thrown this much money at it, this is how much we are ahead. But that's a total fallacy.
Yeah. And cashing out also means admitting that you might have been wrong.
Yeah. No, it's really hard behaviorally to do that. None of us, we don't like loss. So if we can pretend like we don't have one.
Right. You are not only are you locking in a loss and saying it's enough of this, it's time to move on. Not only are we locking in that loss, but we are admitting that we were wrong and we were okay with just, I'm good getting out, losing money. Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah, and this is obviously easy to relate to investing, where we have a bad investment that we keep getting and keep going into. If I liked it at $20, I like it even more at $15.
Yeah.
If I liked it at $15, I like it even more at $10.
Although...
And then hang on, I think it might go to $0.
Although, we've seen this with Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah.
When Bitcoin hit $10,000 and everybody had to have it, and then it crashed to $3,500, and all of a sudden nobody wanted it. Do you notice that? But then when it went to 20, everybody wanted it again. So, okay, there's an instance where maybe it didn't work out that way. From a financial standpoint, this is why casinos exist.
Yeah.
Right? Well, if I keep doubling down eventually I'm going to hit it big. And I've only got to hit it big once to make it up.
Until you have $0.
Right. That's the problem, right?
You can't double
You
$0.
can go to $0. Yeah. Okay, so with the Bitcoin analogy, that can be a little casino-ish too.
Yeah.
Episode 10.
We've talked
We
about
have
that
opinions.
one. How do we tie that to bourbon, Caleb? The sunk cost fallacy.
Boy.
I don't think you can throw good money after bad in bourbon. Unless you just keep buying bad bourbon. But why would you do that?
Why would you do that? There's so many good ones out there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
Again, I'm going to stick with go with what you like. I mean, I picked up a bottle of $14 bourbon last night because I've always wanted to try it. And it didn't knock my socks off. This did, right? But it definitely was punching above its weight class.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure where I was going with that, quite honestly.
Yeah, we can't relate it.
Enjoy, do what you enjoy.
Yeah, and if you don't like it,
From a bourbon standpoint.
if you don't like that bourbon and you bought it, oh, here it is. You buy a horrible bottle of bourbon. You don't have to finish it, man.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to
There you
drink
go.
that.
There you go. There's the
That's
analogy. Cleveland, we're looking at you.
Yeah, Cleveland bourbon.
I'll just mix it. Oh my gosh! It just made made my cocktail horrible.
Just mix a good bourbon. You don't have to drink it just because you bought it. Yeah, perfect.
What's funny about that is I'm thinking about, and every time I
done
talk to you, you're like, "Well, I gotta finish it. It cost me this much," and I'm like, is that number going up?
Yes, it was.
And then come to find out, it's like, hey man, that was only $20-some. It's dump it. Use it to clean stuff. I don't care.
Perfect.
Good analogy. Man, we are on today.
We're on fire. All right, bias number 4 is the familiarity bias. Caleb, we've got experience with this.
We do. We live in a small town.
Yeah. It's lovely.
Yeah, and it is. It's a great place to live. And we live in the Midwest, so there are a lot of banks.
Indeed.
And a lot of, we have, I don't know, we can look out our office window and see 3 hometown banks, right? Started here in Defiance, Ohio.
Yeah.
Right?
Or nearby.
Or 20 miles down the road, whatever. There's some brand loyalty there because of that.
Yeah.
We also see that impacting some people's financial decisions, investment decisions, or another. Well, heck, I had a meeting with, unfortunately, a client of mine passed away, and met with his wife, and they had both retired from the same company.
Okay.
And they had their pension there. They were able to retire earlier than most because it was a great job, great benefits, good pension, pretty good company overall. My diagnosis was You have everything basically in one company, and we can't do this.
Like their investments were in that company.
Their investments were in the company. Their pension was riding on that company. Everything. But there's the familiarity bias.
Yeah, they knew
it.
Company.
That company took care of their family all those years. It allowed them to retire early. It gave them a good pension. It gave them the freedom that they wanted in retirement. Guess what? I put on my glasses, my unbiased glasses, and say, this is a bad investment move. I can't let you do this from a risk management standpoint.
Yeah.
But that familiarity bias is strong. It's really strong.
Yeah, we see people heavily concentrated with their investable assets in companies that they think are safe just because they know them.
Yep.
And we had this happen. We're a General Motors town, or used to be. Yeah. And lots of folks through the financial crisis were working at General Motors. Mm-hmm. Their pension was from General Motors. Their investments were in General Motors stock.
Yeah.
That stock went to zero, and they may have been laid off.
And their bonds.
And the bonds as well. But they were familiar with it. General Motors, they know it. They work there. They know the people. They felt more confident because they knew of it. The same with these local banks. They invested because I bank there. I know that bank.
Yep.
It's the same with any company that you kind of know.
And that really filters through the other biases too, really.
Yeah.
Other reasons that you're comfortable with something. It's yours. You feel like a part of it, right? Mm-hmm. That kind of the endowment effect there.
Yeah.
The loss aversion also. It's been stable. It's provided. You know, the idea of leaving that quote unquote reliability behind for something else. You know. It kind of filters through all of these. That's a big one, though. The familiarity bias is we all do this.
I think that it's really easy to bring into bourbon as well.
Yes.
Because you get a distillery that you like maybe the Buffalo Trace line, Caleb, and you're not going to go over to the Russell stuff. You're not going to try Wild Turkey.
And there are some great ones
We just bought
there.
A bottle of Maker's Mark for the office.
Yes.
The first office bottle of any Maker's Mark product.
I haven't had any Maker's Mark in probably 4 or 5 years. Not on purpose.
We just got stuck on the Buffalo Trace train for a really long time, Caleb.
You know what, though? That bottle that you bought was one of my favorite bottles this year.
It's been heavily overshadowed. That was last week, and this week there's a Stagg Jr. here, so...
New favorite. But that was definitely one of my favorite bottles of the year.
Yeah. And you get stuck with just what you know and what you're comfortable with. And sometimes you don't branch out, and you could be really missing out.
Really? Absolutely.
And that familiarity could be misleading.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why blind tests are fun, right? Blind taste tests. That's really, in the bourbon culture, is a lot of fun. Speaking of blind testing, right? I know I've probably said this on the podcast before, but I had a client who wanted something very familiar because it was safe to her. And I showed her what I thought she needed to do versus what she wanted to do.
Oh, when I put
the performance chart, and I said, which one is yours and which one is the one I'm proposing? And she goes, this one is familiar. I know it. I've seen the performance. This is it. And I'm like, nope, it's not.
Wrong.
Actually, yours is way riskier. Like she wanted safe, right? Mm-hmm. She wanted something that she knew. That idea there.
Yeah. I've done the same thing with somebody that was invested in a local bank stock, publicly traded.
Yep.
Loved the dividend. They're like, this is actually stable. I get the dividend. It's awesome. I just put up a chart, blind testing it. I was like, here's a well-diversified portfolio that produces some income versus yours. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you which is which. Which would you rather own?
Yeah, tell me which one you want.
And they're like, this one. And I'm like, that's not the one you own.
Yep.
You can really mess up. Just because you're familiar with something, it doesn't actually mean it's better, Caleb.
Yeah. Familiarity bias. Cool.
Let's go on to the next one.
Anchoring.
This
one is really interesting, and we see it. In fact, the conversation we had earlier with someone in the office was a product of anchoring. Explain a little bit what anchoring means.
Anchoring is really fixing your expectations on some random point that makes no sense. And what we see happen a lot of times, and what happened in the office with the person that's like, this is going all over the place.
I'm down 2% today.
Let's say that you invest $10,000 into the stock market, and it goes up to $20,000 over a year. That's pretty good.
And next year you lose 10%.
Yeah. Oh no! Now you have 18.
I only have 18. I had 20.
I lost $2,000 is what that person is going to say.
Yeah.
Because they anchored at $20,000.
Exactly.
And now we, as the financial advisors, are like, no, we anchored at $10,000. That's not fair.
We're up 80% here. Come on. Yeah.
But that's what happens with anchoring. You do that to a lot of different stuff. And actually, we had a bonus one that I'm going to tie into this.
Okay.
Called the bandwagon effect, which is really just an outflowing of anchoring because you're anchoring to maybe what somebody else did. So let's say you're in a conservative portfolio because you are taking income or you can't take very much risk because you're not going to make any more money, and your buddy over there is in a super aggressive portfolio.
Yep.
And the market as a whole, let's say the S&P 500 goes up 20% in 1 year, you only go up 10%. They went up 20. You've anchored to their benchmark now. And you're like, hey, I missed out on 10% that I should have gotten.
Yep.
Well, no, because you weren't anchored to that.
You're drawing income, and when it goes the other way around, by the way, you're not anchoring when it goes the other way.
No,
right?
we don't usually do that. Our minds don't anchor backwards.
Also with the bandwagon effect, I love this, right? Because people talk about, oh, my guy got me this, my guy got me that.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. People that are talking to each other about that tend to exaggerate. I'm up like 15%. You're up 11.
Yeah.
So does that round to 15? I don't know. For some people that rounds to 20, right? We're going for the next 10. It's not productive for one thing.
Right. We just set random anchoring points at different places. And then how that goes with the bandwagon effect is we don't want to be wrong by ourselves.
Yeah.
We'd rather be wrong with a bunch of other people. So
at least we're all in it together.
Yeah, I'm going to anchor to what the whole crowd is doing. And you see this with stock market bubbles, that euphoric investing stuff that happens. You see with the rush into meme stocks, that sort of thing. And it's not based on anything rational.
That's kind of the fear of missing out.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And that's a form of anchoring. You're anchoring to whatever the crowd is doing, whatever's happening at the time, and you're not making a decision based on data. I want to see how you connect this to bourbon.
I'm anchoring to Stagg right now.
Every bourbon, you used to like lots of bourbons, and now the bar is set at Stagg Jr.
Well, you know me, when it comes to a lot of my hobbies, I am a sampler. So I like to try different things all the time. It's been the same with pipe tobacco. It's been the same thing with guitars and things like that. You know, you're always sampling and trying for a different sound. And I really like this, but I kind of want to see what this is like too.
Yeah.
And eventually I'll get to that perfect one, and that'll be mine, and I'll settle with that. No. Some personalities like mine, we like to sample. I'll never find the perfect guitar tone.
Yeah.
I'll never find that perfect pipe tobacco. Right now, today, another bias would be recency bias. I feel like I'll never find a better bourbon than this. But let's be honest, I'll be sampling new bourbons. Okay?
You're never going to stop.
But right now, I am anchoring. This is kind of a benchmark for me here. That's how I'm tying it back
like
to bourbon today.
Because when you taste other bourbons, you're not going to measure them against Buffalo Trace, which is regular, steady, good, not amazing, not bad. You're not going to taste another bourbon and compare it to Buffalo Trace. You're going to taste a bourbon, and you're going to compare it to the greatest bourbon you have ever had, and you're going to be like, not great.
Yeah. Well, okay, and maybe this is more applicable, right? I'm not going to try that Evan Williams small batch and be like, yeah, well, it's no Stagg. Well, it doesn't claim to be, right? It's not in the same price point. However, what I would say is I'm going to compare this against other $46 bourbons and say, why can't you all do this at the same price point, right?
I don't know if that's fair either.
Oh, boy. Hey, that was fun, Jason.
Oh, that was a good time. I hope you all took something out of it. Calls to action, Caleb. I want people to just know that cognitive biases exist.
Yes.
Get real, y'all. Analyze your decision-making process. Know that even though you're really smart, actually, there's a lot of research that the smarter you are, the more likely you are to fall into these biases because you're really good at talking yourself into stuff.
Yeah.
So be aware. You have biases. I have biases. We just need to know that they are there and know when we're acting irrationally.
Yes.
Sometimes our gut can help us. But most of the time with finance, I've seen it really mess stuff up.
Yeah, I always go back to the illustration that our pastor has drawn over the years. We're emotional people, but the truth is the same all the time. And you need to, while we're talking about anchor, you need to anchor yourself to the truth, that flat line that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
If you live by your emotions, there's no comfort, there's no peace there.
Yeah.
And that's a good analogy, honestly.
I think he says, am I really feeling this way, or did I just have a bad burrito last night?
Yeah. Seriously, there are so many things that affect these biases and how we develop them, and almost none of them are truth.
Right.
And almost none of them are statistical or helpful, quite honestly, right? So this is where working with a good financial advisor is helpful, right? Where I tell people a lot of times my value is that I'm a buffer between you and a bad decision or
really
a gut reaction.
That's that
right?
Vanguard white paper on advisor alpha, or the value that an advisor actually provides, and it's really helping people through these cognitive biases mostly. Is
the behavioral aspect, the
we
coaching
love all
of
the
it.
technical prowess that we have and the tax strategy and all of that stuff, but this is really where a lot of the value comes from.
Yeah, agree. Good deal. Learn to deal with the emotions and not live by the emotions.
Yes.
It's okay to feel them because you're human.
Yeah.
You're going to have them.
My wife would probably be happy to hear me say, your emotions matter.
Yes.
Let's not disregard them completely. But they're wrong, so...
Yes, I'm sure she would like to hear you say that. All right, man. Anything else today?
No, let's wind this down so we can finish our Glenn Cairns of Stagg Jr.
Yeah, all right, guys. So thanks for having a drink with us this week. It's been fun, but it's time to close out the tab. If you have a question or a topic you want addressed on the Old Fashioned Finance podcast, be sure to email us at speakeasy@oldfashionedfinance.com. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to share the show with someone you love or just someone who needs a little money muddling themselves. You can stay up to date with the latest action by following us on Facebook and Instagram. Old Fashioned Finance is brought to you by Blue Jay Financial Group. That's bluejayfg.com. And produced by Podastery Studios. We've been your hosts, Jason and Caleb. Cheers.
Blue Jay Financial Group, LLC, Blue Jay, is a registered investment advisor registered with the state of Ohio. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The presence of this advertisement on this podcast shall not be directly or indirectly interpreted as a solicitation of investment advisory services to persons of another jurisdiction unless otherwise permitted by statute. Follow-up or individualized responses to consumers in a particular state by Blue Jay in the rendering of personalized investment advice for compensation shall not be made without first complying with jurisdiction requirements or pursuant to an applicable state exemption. All verbal and written content on this presentation is for information purposes only. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Blue Jay, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by our firm as to other parties' informational accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with an advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation.